Oh, yeah, I didn't.
What temperature question? Low. They did a CT scan. Oh, that's right. Okay, I forgot you Brazil. Y'all didn't sell us.
Ready to roll. Okay, I have 4:34, and at this time, we will call the meeting of the Kansas City Commission to order. And with that, Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, you'll pray with me. Heavenly Father, Lord, we just thank you so much for all that you do for us. Father, we thank you for a beautiful day in Canyon, Texas. Thank you for the continued protection of the men and women that serve this city. And Father, we thank you for the continued protection of the citizens in the city. Father, just be with us tonight as we discuss matters about the future of this city, and help us when we mess it up. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Pledge with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, takes us to item number 4, approval of the minutes of the meeting of December 5th, 2022.
Mayor, I laid before you.
Excuse me, I've got the wrong date. The minutes of the meeting of January 9th, 2023. Try that. So.
That's the corrected minutes before you. I had $4 million on the Kylie Heiner Park, and that has been corrected in those minutes, so.
If there are no other changes, I might make a motion to approve.
Second. Have a motion and second to accept the minutes as with that correction. All in favor, signify by raise your right hand. Opposed, like sign. Motion passes. Okay, that takes us to item number 5, public comments from interested citizens. We do have several folks that have signed in. I think we've got 2 different items coming up that most of those pertain to. There's one, James Woolsey. Is yours pertain to an item on the agenda, or?
I think it's separate.
Okay, that's the way we took it, so if you would like to come up and speak right quick. So, and we've got several of those today, so I'm gonna ask everybody that you limit that to 3 minutes each. So,
That's all I need.
and if you would, state your name and your address, please.
Okay. My name is James Woolsey, and I live in 2006 8th Avenue. And the reason I'm here today is my wife and I were driving down 18th Street, heading toward the depot, and we're gonna go to United. Okay, and this was about, I'd say 6:37, maybe 7:30. And anyway, the reason I'm here is I'm totally concerned about these little scooters that are allowed to drive on our public streets, okay? And there was a kid, probably not bigger than that little boy over there in the blue hoodie, maybe a little smaller, I don't know. But anyway, he came around the corner, and if I'd been going, I don't know, any rate of speed, it would have been like, boom, just a head-on smash. And so my wife and I were real concerned. It shook us up, because I don't know if any of you have lost a young one to an automobile accident or something like that, but ooh, it'd be terrible. So that was my concern. I don't know if there's anything in our public policy that limits the use of those on public streets. I don't know, but it sure put a scare into my wife and I. So that's what I wanted to tell you. We were shook up. So.
Second time it's happened too. The first time there were 2 young boys on those things at night, and they went in front of us. Those things don't even have a light.
So yeah, it's a definite concern. And like I say, I don't know if the city has an ordinance against that, or it's kind of like, okay, do we put up a stop sign now that somebody's gotten killed at that intersection? So I think it's better to get something in front of as opposed to behind. So it's just a word of a concerned citizen. I think that's all I've got to say.
Okay, thank you, James. It's something we can dig into. So. All right, I think that's everybody that signed in other than pertaining to an item here. So we will move forward with item number 6. To consider and take appropriate action on interlocal agreement with Randall County for shared costs of engineering and construction for Brown Road Railroad crossing. Joe?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. We have been in discussions with Randall County on this item. Brown Road is half City of Canyon, half Randall County. And Chuck researched that, and I think it goes all the way back to the 20s. And so when that annexed, and that runs all the way, I think, up to 60. So it's, we're looking at a cost share with Randall County to reconstruct this approach to the railroad tracks. How did we get here? Well, in August, there was a commercial vehicle belly dump driving up, and if you don't know, there's a pit out there. I believe it's a caliche pit, and trucks have been driving up and down that for decades. And so one of the trucks got high-centered and stuck on the railroad tracks, and a train did collide with it. So thankfully, no injuries, but at this point in time, upon our research as the city, we determined and think it was probably some of the planks that they had replaced within the tracks. That's our best assessment on it. Notwithstanding, the railroad, BNSF, will not reopen that until we basically reconstruct it to standards. The grades going up don't meet the standards. Most of the ones in town don't meet that standard. And so they've kind of dug their heels into the ground, and they first asked for an engineering assessment on the slope grades. We all can tell easily that we don't need to do an engineer assessment on that. It doesn't meet. And so at this point, in order to try to reopen it, Randall County and the city will have to look at reconstructing that railroad approach. So if it was up to Randall County and City of Canyon, it'd be open right now, but that's not up to us. So they've already repaired all that. Tim Sorrells and his great staff at Randall County Road and Bridge have already put some signage up about that. Unfortunately, with that being closed, all that truck traffic is being rerouted down 4th, and so it's beating up 4th even more as they go out that way. So obviously, time is of the essence to get this open. And those trucks have been going over that, since probably I was born. So it's been going over a long time. So we need to get that back open. Plus, we have a bunch of residents out there on top of it. And so in discussions between staff and Randall County, we're looking at doing a 50-50. Randall County has approached Friesen Nichols about this project. That proposal is in here. You'll see that, I believe. Exhibit A. It should be in here. Maybe not.
It's in there.
Scope for engineering design and related services.
I've got it pulled up.
I'm not seeing it in the packet, Gretchen.
I've got it pulled up.
Okay. That's the exhibit. It's about 9-12 pages. And so it's a full reconstruction design. And so in order to do this and move forward, we needed to do an interlocal cooperation agreement, a Chapter 791 agreement with Randall County to do a cost share. And so that's kind of where we're at today. And so part of those conversations have led to also the quiet zone aspect that I'll bring up back here in a second. Overall, it's just to rebuild it and get it to where we need to in order to reopen it. And that's the goal at the end of the day. At this time, that cost is approximately, for the engineering piece, Gretchen, can you go on? Keep going. I think it's the last page. I think so. It's 6 figures. So And so it's 100 plus, it's like $130,000 for the engineering. That also includes permitting and all that. There's a lot of special, unique characteristics with permitting in the railroad and flaggers and all that. So there's a lot of extra requirements that we typically wouldn't need for a typical city infrastructure project. So that's all been written in there, so. But, see if I can see it.
That was on the last page.
I thought it was, maybe not.
We don't have an opinion of probable cost in here, so I don't think.
I'll pull it up.
Oh, okay.
I've got it. It's 131,000. Basic services, engineering design is 89,555. And then the special services for survey and permitting is an additional 41. So,
Now, does that include the whole package, or is that just one part?
yeah, that's turnkey. So that's
It's
from,
not construction, it's just engineering.
yeah, but it's construction phase services, they would oversee the construction phase services, so that is factored in there. Design, bid, all that, and then the permitting stuff with the railroad and special services they have to do with the railroad. So that's approximately 131,351.
And the county sought this out.
Yes, the county sought this out, so. We thought it would be beneficial, the judge and I just agreed that it's an unusual project. And so we had originally been discussing with TxDOT. We had a three-way meeting with TxDOT, City of Kenyon, Randall County, right in the beginning. And TxDOT had helped us a lot through this because apparently they've had to do quite a few of these when these incidents occurred on their roadways as well. And that BNSF has been doing the same thing to them. And so ultimately they've kind of backed out, but we all thought it would be in the best interest to get someone that's had a little more experience with these types, and that's why Freese and Nichols was looked at out of Lubbock. The Lubbock office is who we were talking to. So,
It's not gonna be bid out.
what do you mean?
Engineering services are not gonna
No,
be bid out.
well, right now it's proposed for Freese and Nichols right now. So,
The county took the lead on, the county took
The
the lead
county
on
took the lead on
Right to
that. so, yes, the county took the lead on that. So what the interlocal, Chuck has constructed with, working with Richard Gore, it's a 50-50 cost split on engineering and then 50-50 on construction. At this time, we don't have an idea what construction would be. I have some guesstimates in my mind. And then the quiet zone would be separate and 100% on the city. That's the way the staff, Chuck and I, have constructed the agreement at this point. The few comments I've received from Judge Dyer, she's not on board with the quiet zone. And so I want to communicate that back to the commission and engage the entire commission's desire on that. Her direct words were that she didn't want to slow the project down any more than it could. She wants, to get it back open, and she thinks that could potentially slow it down. There is some width requirements that would have to be made. More than likely, 99% chance, this will have to be widened. And so I'm pretty sure with Dan and I's conversations, and some of the other staff, it doesn't even meet the county's road standards for width of the actual pavement. So it will have to be widened. To what degree, I don't know. I think Dan quoted 28 feet at the minimum. I don't see where you're at, Dan. 28 feet, I think, is what we agreed upon for county standards. Is that correct, Dan?
You really need two 14-foot lanes anyway with all the truck traffic.
Correct. So those are our initial early thoughts. I think that's all I've got right now on that. So I'll be happy to answer any questions. I suspect this will be 600,000 to 800,000 construction. Just my best guess.
Split between the two of us, correct?
Yes, split between the two.
And then
That could
the
be more.
quiet zone on top of that.
Yeah, the quiet zone would probably be on top of that. I've not talked to Freese and Nichols yet on this, so personally. The county's been running lead on a lot of that. They want to move forward with this project as soon as possible to get it open, so I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Well, it's difficult for me to even really grasp how much more expensive the safe zone would be, or how much longer it would be. And I know y'all don't have those numbers, because, I mean, it would be just, but ballpark, what do you think the difference is?
For just your median and your signage and 100 feet going each way, your median has to go 100 feet in that location. Dan and I, we've looked at that's probably $100,000, Dan, at this point in time.
The two we did, what was it, 6 or 8 years ago, they were 100,000 then.
So we would anticipate about 100,000 for that. That would not, and then it's the width issue, depending on how wide the road ends up. If the county agrees to this and we still need this, then we're adding on. If what the county agrees to is wide enough for us to do that, then we'd be able to do that.
And we did no paving work to the one on Fourth Street.
Well, those other costs would be shared costs, so wouldn't it, John, the width and the paving?
Not the additional width. If there was additional, that would be just on us.
I think we've said we think we'd need at least a minimum of 28 feet width, but in order to meet the QZ, it need to be 35. Is that what I think that's
32.
32 additional.
You know, those are pieces I think we could ask the county for still too. And may get a no answer, but I think we could continue to
I know
ask on some of that.
On that same point, Gary, I know one of the other things that Dan has brought up as a great point is that truck traffic is heavy. And I do think we probably need to reinforce it a little stronger than a typical road as well.
Good call.
So, we've had some internal staff conversations that we need to have with the county on that, so beefing it up a little more. You got lots of tonnage going over there countless times a day, so.
And this interlocal is really not necessarily associated with the commitment to the quiet zone, Joe, correct?
That's correct.
Really, this is just a commitment
I think it's
to them to move forward with the engineering, and we will continue to find more information.
engineering and construction. And then we would approve, if we did construction, numbers, those would have to be approved by both entities.
Both entities, right?
Both entities, and we have to both approve the final design. That's either commission or staff, so, as well. QZ is an alternative on this. At worst came to worst, we could always go back and do the quiet zone.
And we would have time to come back to you all if the agreement was approved, Joe. We would be able to get the engineering started, starting to move down the road with that. And then out along the way, we would confirm whether it was wide enough, what we needed to do for the quiet zone, and we could come back to you all with those costs.
That would be the final design approval, would be the decision on those.
Yeah, we do have some folks here today to speak to the quiet zone and have signed in. Dalton Bell, got you first, so if you would come. Please.
Yep. I'm Dalton Bell, 16 Lindsay Lane. I don't know if I'm supposed to give the address. Nice guy.
Thank you. Good job.
Myself and my friend over here, Matt Allen, we started this flag football league. It's called West Texas NFL Flag. We utilize Brown Road parks. The Brown Road has been awesome to us. The City of Canyon's been awesome to us. We've grown every year due to the City of Canyon and the park. This year we had 625 kids came out and played, 80 teams. I've got teams coming from Nazareth, Bushland, even had a team from Clovis, Plainview, and Dumas, all coming to Canyon here in the fall. I don't know if you've ever been out there in the fall. We have thousands of people out there at the park. I don't know if you have kids, grandkids. If you don't, I highly encourage you to come out and see what's going on out there. I understand the reasoning of the horns on the train out there, and I see why they're there, but I'm taking this as an opportunity to push for the silent crossing. If you're ever out there trying to coach a Pee-wee division, 4 or 5-year-old kid trying to play flag football, the train can be a little bit traumatizing at times. And it's that way for grandparents. And it is what it is, we get it, but I'm taking this opportunity to try to make the park better, not just for us, for Paladar Soccer, for the folks that live there, and for the people that go out there and walk around the park. It is a great park. We're excited about the park. So anything we can do to help, push this. It sounds like it's going to be on the city now to do the silent. So anything we can do to help, we're here to support. So thank you.
Thank you, Joel.
That track averages, one train every 15 minutes, 24 hours a day.
And I think there's more in the daytime than there are at night too, so. but-
It's almost equal when you look at BNSF, when you look at their counts, but it may be slightly, yes.
Question for Dalton. Hey, Dalton. Pretty close. Sir, I have a question for you. Have you done any kind of estimates on the economic impact that your league is bringing to the city?
I haven't, but I know a lot of the folks go eat at Joe Taco, they come in town, buy gas, do whatever, and they stay here, especially the folks in Clovis. I know they've always stayed the night before or after.
Yeah.
So, I think it's a good thing for the town for sure. So, and I've got 3 players here that have played with us multiple years. If you want to put them on the stand and put them in the spot, good chance to learn for these guys.
It looks like they could handle it. So.
Yeah. But we appreciate you.
Next one signed in is Shirley Holman. Shirley here.
Okay, good evening.
If you would say your name and address, please.
Shirley Holman, 1001 Brown Road. I've lived out there for many years. I raised my family out there. This morning, I thought it was a law or something that they couldn't keep both tracks 4th or 6th closed, but both of them were closed at the same time. Nobody could get through. The trucks were all backed up, I don't know, way deep. And I sat there for 26 minutes and waiting, and they did have an emergency, I think. Somebody said that somebody, the engineer or somebody, I guess, got sick, and I did see the paramedics, the ambulance go down the side. It's down in a draw, and after a while they came back, and the train did get moved finally, but after 26 minutes. My concern is, besides a medical emergency out there, we could have a bad fire. Have y'all ever seen the dry grass out there? And how bad it's, I fought fire years back on some of that old pasture land. One Sunday afternoon, me and my husband and several other volunteers, somebody set their trash on fire, didn't have it covered, and it just, a flake went out, and boy howdy, did it spread. And you don't get cow chips out very easily, especially with dirt or we had some tow sacks fighting it. And of course, volunteer firemen were out there too. But that is a really big concern is the fires, because we have too much dry land all around us. And it's just a big, big concern. And that's been a big inconvenience. The trucks are bad enough up and down the road so much. And it is a lot of wear and tear on our road. But anyway, if something could be done, it'd be great. We'd appreciate it. I know most of us would appreciate it. Especially the truckers, I know they'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Can I ask you, how do you feel about the quiet zone?
About the what?
The quiet zone?
There is a quiet zone? Well, we don't have a quiet zone out there.
But would you like to have one?
Well, they didn't blow their train
How
horns.
would you enforce it though?
So there are certain FRA standards, Federal Railroad Administration standards, where we have to put a median in, and ultimately that median blocks traffic, doesn't allow anybody to go in and out of the tracks like they would. You know, they can't maneuver the bars. However, in response to that, the train does not blow a horn anymore. You still have the cross rails that come down, but the train doesn't blow the horn at all. So you'd have no horn except for the ones way up on down the rural parts of the county.
Well, I'm outside of the city limits, but just not that far out.
Right.
You know,
So I don't know if you've been in town where they come through town.
Yeah.
They don't blow the train horns at all.
yeah, I know.
It'd be just like that. I think that's what Commissioner Ray was asking.
Yeah, does the horns bother you?
What?
Do the horns bother you?
No, not really. I'd rather, my son-in-law's a railroader and has been for the majority of his life. And, you know, I'd rather they blowed myself because so many people are on the phones anymore, they don't pay attention. And I don't mind the horn. I mean, I missed it when they quit it because I thought, this is unusual. They've done it all through history, why not keep doing it? What was good enough then is good enough now, in my opinion. It worked. Amen. So, you know, but anyway, that's my concern, is the fires and people's safety. Thank you.
that's probably I don't know, Dan, when we started paperwork, it's probably an 8-9 month process, just paperwork wise.
That'd be a good.
And we've navigated that before, we successfully navigated that, we've re-upped, we had to send our information back in again to be resubmitted, and we've done that. So we know those processes. It does take time, and you have to do it perfect. You can be like Fort Worth and be 2 inches off on the concrete, and you're gonna pour 2 more inches of curb and those kind of things, because they're gonna measure it and they want it to be that way. On that, I've pulled safety reports on that particular intersection. Prior to this accident, there's only been 2 others reported. I think 80s and 90s. I think they were way apart from each other. One, there was a person in the car, one there wasn't. But that's the only 2 reported accidents other than this one at that crossing that they've on their accident reports. Just to give you more information about that crossing.
All right, we also have Josh Garza has signed in. Josh.
Hello, Joshua Garza, 14 Rock Cove. I'm here to speak on behalf of the Quiet Zone as well, just like Dalton had with Matt Allen. You know, I've come accustomed to the train horns in Canyon, and unfortunately that's with my role of being a coach out at Brown Road Soccer Field, so you know, for football, and also a coach and been presently on the board for the Soccer Association. When I echo what Dalton said, you know, we're appreciative of City of Canyon offering the Brown Roads up. You know, that brings a lot of foot traffic in. From a standpoint, from a coaching standpoint, the train horns are a little loud, especially when you're on the football field. You know, you're less than 100 yards away at some points in times when the train itself is pretty loud. It's pretty loud itself, just with the tracks and the wheels. And so the only thing I can say, other than what Dalton eloquently said, is I think it'd be better for us, and especially for all the folks that are going out to Brownwood Field, especially with the smaller kids. Again, from the youth soccer all the way up to the 4 or 5 year olds playing Pee Wee football. I know, having a 6-year-old myself, she is very not accustomed to loud noises, and sometimes she will sit on the side, plug her ears until the train horn passes. And again, like one of the commissioners there said, I think there's a train horn train coming through every 15 minutes. So in the span of a full hour, that's a lot of train traffic coming through. So I'm going to echo what Dalton said. I think it'd behoove us to not at least consider that, and especially for all the foot traffic and the folks coming in from out of town too. And that's where I'm going to put it. All right, thank you.
Thanks, Josh. All right, well, Joe, I think you need direction from us then, and
Thoughts and direction, especially on the Quiet Zone. The biggest thing is, like, hypothetically, we move forward, at least get the engineering and all that up and rolling. And so it could be several months before we can get to construction. So, and then construction will take a few months on top of it, so. But I think for the most part, the Quiet Zone would be on us if we wanted to do it.
And Dan confirmed that we could have the Quiet Zone as an alternate bid. So,
Yep. I think that's the way it's written into that.
Yep. On the interlocal. Yep. She can take it or leave it later, so.
Personally, I don't like the situation we're in, because I would open the crossing, and I don't think this is either Canyon or Randall's fault. I think the maintenance that BNSF maintenance crew did on those, and Chuck has multiple affidavits on that, on the beams inside the tracks is what caused this. However, they're gonna dig their heels in. Just my 2 cents on the whole.
See, the railroad controls the right of ways, so we can't make them open it until we do some improvements, so.
And I think that's a really good point. I think we tried to put that out publicly. It's the railroad that has the road shut down, and they won't allow it to be opened until it is rebuilt. So that's not the county or the city making that decision.
Nope.
Correct.
You know, personally, I really think this is the time to put the quiet crossing in. I think this is going to be the cheapest time to do it. I have been out there. I've walked that path before, but I've been out there while, kids that park is loaded with kids. You talk about hundreds of folks out there, but I've been out there during the football games and the trains go by. It's just loud and, right now it is what it is, but it's not a good situation. And I think we really enhance the, Brown Road and what that is to our community, which I think there's a lot of kids from the county out there playing too. And whether the county would weigh in and decide to help step up with that, I think it could still be an ask. But either way, I think it's worth going this direction. I think now is the time to do it. And, we've, I think, had good success with the other quiet crossings. I think you can probably make different cases for the safety standpoint of it, but I know there's been times that we've had accidents in Canyon, people trying to go around. I think with the medians, I think that makes that more difficult. So I think you could say which is safer, but personally, I think it's the time to try to move forward and do it. So.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, we need to get that open as soon as we can. We have people that live out there. We need to take care of those folks. And I agree about the quiet zone too. I think the one in town made a huge difference. And I think that would just better serve that park if we did that. So I agree. I move that we adopt resolution number 05-2023.
You have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion?
So, let's say we even move forward with the silent quiet zone. The county can still say no, right? Because they have to agree. Even if we pay for it, the county has to agree to the
I
engineering
think to
side.
some extent, to some extent, I think it's all on us, either engineering or not. It is called out in the proposal as an alternate within the, it is called out separately, and so I think we need to at least be on the same page. I think what will be the biggest thing is how wide we need to make it. That will be the biggest thing.
So you said the judge was opposed to it. Is she opposed to helping pay for it or just opposed to it in general?
Both.
Why is she opposed to it?
She thinks it'll delay the project, and she doesn't think that eliminating the train horn is worth it from a safety standpoint. That's been her direct word. I don't know if that comes from the whole county commission or just the county judge. My interpretation is that comes from the county judge.
Do you know what a delay means? Like, are you talking like 3 weeks or like a year? Or
Well, it's
what?
all gonna be redone. That whole thing is gonna be tore up. It's gonna have to be widened no matter what.
But I mean, with her concern of the quiet zone.
I personally don't think it would be delayed. I think you can do a lot of it together, and you'd have some cost savings.
Push comes to shove, we did it on we can do it on an operating track. We could get it open, and we can come back and put in signs and put our medians in. Less convenient, it's better to do all that at one time, because you have to have a flagman there, $300 an hour, you can't be in the right of way, there's a lot of issues there. But we did it on an operating track, we could do it again on an operating track. It's just the width of the road, the construction of the road has to be done. And then we can get the other done, whether it's during that time or after that time.
Correct. I think
So we can get started and then come back later and do the quiet zone if we need to.
If we need to, yes.
Or if we can.
They're gonna get the bid as alternate anyway, so that's good. We'll be able to know it.
That's correct. Paul's correct. It'll be an alternate as long as the county's good with that. It is written up as an alternate in the packet.
Correct.
And Matt and Dalton, in the meantime, y'all ought to get your numbers together and try to get kind of an economic impact that you can take to the county commissioners. See what effect it's having on the county. I think it'd be very helpful.
Is it correct that the road has to be widened regardless?
Yes. True. It's our interpretation it does. I think, man, we quoted it at 22 feet, Mr. Reese, is that correct?
It's only 22 feet wide.
Yeah, it's only 22 feet wide, which doesn't even meet county road standards, so it will have to be widened no matter what.
It needs to be what?
I think we're saying 28's with our desire. I'm not sure what's their actual standard. Lucas, do you remember?
You gotta go.
28 width out, 35 width.
Got
So my takeaway from the meeting the other day is it would be a whole lot more convenient to do it while you already had equipment mobilized out there.
Correct. We might even have to put curb and gutter. I know Tim Swirls and I and the rest of us have talked about that might even have to put curb and gutter on it too.
Commissioner Ray, if I may, I believe that if the commission is in support of looking into the quiet zone, you might want to amend if it's your desire, motion to include an addendum for the quiet zone so that could be looked at as well. Is that correct, Chuck?
Yeah, and of course, adoption of the version of the interlocal agreement as presented. I have not heard any objection to that from the county, and it does have a built-in alternate proposal for the quiet zone. So if you approve the interlocal agreement as presented, I think that will take care of it.
It is.
Or to approve the interlocal agreement as presented, then.
As well.
I still second it.
Okay.
As well, you guys, staff will advocate to reinforce that as well. I mean, you got some serious weight going over that, so I think we should probably as well advocate for that to the nth degree, because it's gonna get beat up.
I think the train horn for our athletic fields has outlived its competitive advantage for our kids.
Can we quote you on that?
Yeah.
Quickly cite that into the minutes. We're gonna have to rewatch that.
No more home field advantage for us.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor of the motion to approve the interlocal agreement as is, which would include the alternate for the quiet zone, signify by raising your right hand. Opposed, like sign. The motion passes. Thank you all. Thank you all for coming today too. So appreciate the comments. And young men, appreciate y'all showing up too. So good luck at the football.
Y'all take care.
Okay. That will take us to item number 7. Consider and take appropriate action on resolution number 05-2023. A resolution of the City Commission of the City of Canyon approving an interlocal agreement with Panhandle Regional Planning Commission for application assistance for 2023 TXCDBG Downtown Revitalizing Program and associated administrative consideration if funded, and authorizing the city manager to act as the city's authorized representative in all matters pertaining to the city's participation in the TXCDBG Downtown Revitalization Program. John?
You all, we have applied for this grant for the past 2 or 3 years. The downtown, we go into the downtown category, which is a good thing for us. There are fewer cities that qualify for that. Last year, I believe we scored like a 71 or 72, Joe, out of 100. And they funded down to a low 80. But we know that some of those cities were funded. They'll be out of the way. So we would like to apply for this grant again. This is the grant, as you can see in my memo, where we take the alley on the east side of the square, and we want to place utilities underground, replace utilities, clean all that up, make that a concrete alley, similar to what you would think of behind the shops on Fifth, just to clean that alley up. The reason we look at that alley is because that's the edge of the square. As people walk to the square and as the community grows and the parking is further away from the square, you have to walk by that alley or through that alley. So we'd like to clean that alley up and make that a good place to be. Previously, PRPC members have done these things for us, come to the meetings, presented these things. There's been changes in the grants. We're required to do those things now as opposed to them doing that. We held a public meeting last week to discuss this. Limited turnout at that. I believe that Joe and I attended that meeting. But we sent the notifications to those places they needed to go. And so at this point in time, what we're asking for is for you to go ahead and sign this interlocal with them, which allows them to manage that grant, just like they always do. And if you remember, in another meeting or two, we'll be coming back and we'll have to proclaim that a blight, Slum and Blythe area, because that's how we qualify for that. We feel, surely the third time, we'll have a fourth time, a better chance at this grant. Simply because the people ahead of us are hopefully getting out. And if anyone didn't get it ahead of us, maybe they'll get tired of applying and we'll move up that pecking order. Why do we not apply? Because there are boxes on that application that we don't get to check. And personally, in our community, I think that's a good thing that we don't get to check some of those boxes. They're things that we don't qualify for.
Socioeconomics.
Based. There are Memphis, Childress, those locations would be cities that would be qualified for many of those. We don't qualify for that. So our score is always lower. We do everything we can to get all the points we can. That's why we held the public meeting when we did. That's why we're kind of rushing through this, because we need to meet certain deadlines so we can maximize those points. So that's all we've got on that.
Mr. Mayor, I move we approve.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to approve the resolution. Is there any further discussion? All in favor signify by raising your right hand. Opposed, like sign.
All right, thank you.
Thank you and good luck.
Yeah, here we go again.
Are our odds better since the PRPC is not doing it for other folks too, you think?
Well, they'll be doing it, they'll be working similarly, but if they miss that last deadline, then they missed out on 2 points or something.
We get extra points if we do all the hearing and all that at a certain time.
So we're working toward that. Joe has kept us on track. He has some experience in this area, so we're trying to stay on track with that.
All right, item number 8, hear presentation, hold public hearing, and consider and take appropriate action on the draft subdivision regulations. Lucas, looks like you're up. So.
Yeah, thank you. So I kind of put in the memo a little bit of the background, and we gave you a lot of that background the last meeting that we had, last commission meeting. This is a project that the city of Canyon has been working on since January of 2019. So we officially passed the 4-year mark. There's been a lot of work on it. We held a couple stakeholder meetings last year. The most recent was in December. And so we got a lot of comments and feedback at that meeting. We worked to address all the things that were said at that meeting. I kind of highlighted some of the major changes in your memo there. Tonight, Friesen Nichols has come and they've got a presentation that they'll present. And then you all have questions and comments, ability to ask those to Friesen Nichols, to city staff. And then once the commission has had the chance to ask questions, we'll be able to open up the public comment as well. So, give it over to Dan.
Thank you, Lucas. My name's Dan Sefco. What I'd like to do is just give a brief overview. I'm sure a lot of you have monitored the progress throughout the process, so this is just a high-level overview of what's gone on, and of course we'll be available for any questions as well as staff. On the next slide, just the items on this slide, on this show here, is we're just going to give you a brief overview, some of the basics of subdivision, just to refresh everybody's memory on how subdivision is different than zoning, and then some of the highlights and key changes, and then what we suggest that your next steps might be. Just by way of introduction, this whole project's three phases. We provided a diagnostic report a long time ago to the City Commission and the Planning and Zoning Commission about what we thought ought to be done. And I know it's a long time ago, and we had the pandemic in there as well, so we're not proud of the fact that this has gone on this long either. The project is a zoning code, which I'll talk about in just a second, and then, of course, the subdivision regulations tonight. And there's a companion development manual, and the development manual is going to be real helpful. It'll have all the application forms and things of actually how to process and submit your applications to the community. But tonight, the focus is on the subdivision regulations. But stay tuned, the zoning ordinance will be coming forth in the coming months. On the next slide, we did have a diagnostic. We met with builders, developers, surveyors, engineers, anybody that asked us to meet with them, we did. We did, as Lucas said, we had a follow-up meeting in December, and we collected feedback, and we addressed all the comments that we had. And then, just so you know, the original draft has been online since September, so anybody that wanted to look at it could. We've had the revised draft online since Wednesday. Some of the basics here is that the purpose of subdivision regulations is different than zoning, just so everybody knows. But its main purpose, it used to be back in the olden days, the third bullet there was land recordation. We had the land grabbing and people came in and stole land and you didn't know who owned land and all that. That was the original purpose of it. But the second purpose of it is to ensure adequate public facilities. A lot of developments were being built in the 40s, 50s, and 60s that just didn't have adequate sewer, adequate water, adequate streets. Also, it's a legal description. It's a legal description of the property, and it allows raw land to be assembled in buildable lots. And so those are the things that are really important about subdivision approval. But the big difference is it's this limited discretion. In other words, if a plat meets the requirements of this subdivision ordinance, this proposed subdivision ordinance, then you are bound and obligated to approve it. In fact, if you don't approve it and it meets, it's automatically approved and automatically filed at the county. So it's not discretionary, as zoning is discretionary. On the next slide, it has a lot of information on it. You all have seen it, but it has lots, blocks, floodplain, drainage, signature blocks, and all the legal requirements that go to the county to be filed. On the next slide, these are some of the highlights of the changes that we've looked at and done. First of all, there's 6 sections in there. If you look through there, these are all sections. Each one has a specific purpose on whether it's procedures or how to file the application, the review bodies, who reviews it. In the case of Canyon, it's both the Planning and Zoning Commission and the City Commission, both. And then we have standards, and then there's a definition section as well. Some of the things that we've done is what we've called house cleaning, cleanup, I guess, but we've tried to make it more readable. There's some graphics in there about the process. We spent a lot of time on making sure that everybody clearly understands the process of subdivision plat approval. And then we've moved the submittal requirements to a guide. There's no reason to have requirements in here about things being on a 24 by 36 page and a north arrow and things like that. That's all can be in development applications, and they're online and they can be filled out. And all modern engineers and surveyors abide by those rules anyway. There is new state law compliance now. We can't accept incomplete applications, and so this is finally referred to in our business as the shot clock. But we have 10 days. On the 11th day, we have to determine whether it's a complete application. So when an applicant submits an application, we have to determine completeness in 10 days, and then we have 30 days to approve it. And so that's state law. Also, there's a new state law on proportionality. Y'all will be addressing that on your capital recovery study, but now there is a requirement that all projects at least have a determination of proportionality. The next slide, the procedures these are the 2 basic procedures that are in the proposed ordinance now. and it gives the developers and the applicants an option. One option is to construct any and all improvements. And then after that, the final plat is submitted. It can go on the consent agenda, and that's what's filed at the county. The benefit of this is there doesn't need to be any surety to make sure that the items are constructed. Now, but some like to have a plat approved and file it quickly so they can begin to sell lots and for other different reasons. And in that case, there will have to be surety, and that's spelled out. So you have to have surety before that can be filed at the county, and that surety assures that the infrastructure will be properly installed. On the next slide, we have spent quite a bit of time in there on procedures, clarified development agreements and when they're required, and also waivers. There's two kinds of waivers. There's minor waivers and there's major waivers. The minor waivers in there are delegated to your development review team. They can make those minor waivers themselves. The major waivers come to you and the Planning and Zoning Commission. So major waivers are ones that basically cost a lot of money. So if there's a lot of money involved, the commission needs to have review of those matters. All plats require dual approval. So if your Planning and Zoning Commission denies it, it's automatically denied. So both bodies have to approve the plat. Now remember, if it meets all the aspects of the subdivision ordinance, you're obligated to approve it. So you don't get to. I'll give you a quick example. We were in one community, and the plat was before the city Planning and Zoning Commission in this case, and there was going to be a multiple family project built on that. It was zoned properly, and they were planning it to build multiple family. Well, the majority of the Planning and Zoning Commission was against multiple family, so they turned the plat down. And city attorney had to call them an executive session and say, you can't do that. Plat met all the requirements. You have to approve that plat. Zoning is a separate process in a different discretion level. So that's very, very important key point here. There's also some things we clarified now. We think it's more specific about how to do an on-site sewer system, and that meets the requirements of the county. And then we'll also state that all alleys are optional now, so they're not a requirement either. But if you do them, this is how you do them. We've clarified the procedures that if you do security, this is the things that you need to do, and those are spelled out in there. Next slide.
Are you trying to say surety and security into the same word?
More or less. That's what I mean.
Dinner time.
On the next slide, I've already mentioned about the waivers, but the waivers are a way for relief. Those are generally clarified and agreed to in a development agreement, so that's all outlined in there. Anything that isn't defined as a minor, we define in there what minor are, but anything that's not defined as minor is a major, so it comes to you all. There are standards in there. One of the suggestions that we had from the December meeting is that we needed a rural cross-section in the ETJ, and we've added that. And so there's a provision for a rural section, either a bar ditch or a swell, whatever you like to call it, is allowed to be constructed in the ETJ. On the next slide.
That originally wasn't in there first.
Right, it originally wasn't in there. That was a suggestion at one of the focus group meetings, and we have added that in there. There are some other things in there. We want to make sure that we do have connectivity. there's a tendency for all these subdivisions to be standalone subdivisions, but at some point in time, there has to be connectivity for fire and emergency access, and that is in there, and we've even made a provision for even some shorter block lengths and things like that. So the next steps tonight, what we are suggesting is that you discuss the draft regulations. We'll be glad to answer any questions. We asked to go first so that any members of the development community could ask questions after we present, so you'll have an opportunity to hear them. We're here to answer questions, and of course, staff is. We'd like you to consider adoption this evening. The only addition we have that we've been told about is the fire marshal has requested on page 51, on item 5, we have the turnaround there under the first one there. It's 200 feet. The fire marshal has suggested 150 feet, and that conforms to IFS. So I think we would like to recommend that if you do approve it, subject to that one change. And that's all we know about right now.
Is that on stub outs, cul-de-sacs, dead end streets?
Yes. Is that correct, Lucas? Okay, all right.
150 to match the fire.
Can you clarify that one more
Say
time,
that
Dan
again.
and Lucas?
Yep, so Craig was reading through and pointed out that our dead end street there, the indication on AI is that any dead end street that exceeds 200 feet will require the turnaround, but the code states 150, so we're just trying to be in conformance with the code.
Instead of 200?
Correct.
Instead of 200. That's on page 51.
Fire code says
Gretchen has it up there on the screen.
Yep.
So at this point, that's the only change that we've been made aware of, and I think staff's been made aware of. So to finish out, we'd like you to consider that approval with that, subject to that one change. And then we're here to answer any questions that you have. Mayor, I'd be glad to answer any questions of you and the commission while I'm up here, or we can hear from the audience at your discretion. So.
Questions for Dan?
And we'll be available afterwards too for questions. So. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
We do have several folks from the development community that have signed in to speak, and so why don't we go ahead and do that? Again, I'll ask you to keep it to 3 minutes since we've got several folks that have signed in. First, Larry Wilhite. Larry, you checked though that I do not wish to speak, but I'm available for questions. Is that your desire? Okay. All right. Walter Henson, if you would you like to speak to?
Can I cede my 3 minutes to Dustin Davis?
Sure, I think Dustin's on the list too, so yeah, well. Mark Hughes, would you like to speak?
Sure. One thing I would ask for you to consider on this, as far as ETJ goes, that if the city is not available or not willing to put in the infrastructure on a piece of property, that it has the option to be removed from your ETJ. So for instance, my property, it has city water, city sewer, there's fiber optic, there's power, everything in my ditch, but your capacity is not enough to feed my development. So I'm asking for it to be an option that, in not only mine, but for someone else as well, that if you're not willing or have the funds to provide a piece of property to be a city development, and we have to move to being an ETJ development, that we have the option of being removed from your ETJ, since you can't provide the utilities to the properties.
Mark, are you saying move from the city limits or from the ETJ?
No, from the ETJ.
I don't think that would be, I think that would be in conflict with state law. We'll have to check on that. We just looked at some of that, Lucas and I, but, so.
Because it kind of puts the developer in a situation when the plan was that, yes, it would be able to provide, and then, no, we can't provide. Now I'm stuck with the property that I'm going to still have to meet some of your requirements that you're not going to be able to be providing utilities to. but I still have to meet some of your standards, so it seems like it would.
Yeah, that's gonna be
should an option.
statutory under chapter 42 of the local government code, so.
Okay, well, I would like for that to be addressed and be answered in a written form.
Yeah, I think to Chuck's opinion, Mark wanted to double check that, but I think state law will supersede anything that we do.
I'll be glad
We will
to,
double.
I'll be glad to check.
We'll be double checking on that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Robbie Christian?
Yeah. I think we all kind of have the same concerns. Our biggest deal is, I just found out about this. I'd like to have more time to read it. I think it may be a great deal. I mean, I guess it was sent out Wednesday, and it's just, I wasn't in town, so it's not all about me, but I think that's all of our concerns. We would like to have more time to read through this, and then we'd have questions that we could ask. Does that make sense? That's what I'm asking for, is just more time.
Robbie, just a point of clarification, what would, in your mind, look like more time to read?
Next week, another week.
So for next meeting.
Yeah, yeah.
How did we pick and choose who had access to this? Because a lot of people were at several of those meetings.
So.
Lucas is pulling up the email list right now. I believe we probably included you, Robbie.
You probably did, and that's not your
Then
fault.
You would have received at least 3 emails.
Yeah.
I mean, through the process, including the December meeting. I can't speak for that. Lucas is looking at the list right now.
Okay.
We had close to 90 names that we built between myself and Danny and everyone we could think of, including people that don't build houses in Canyon.
Yeah.
We invited them and everybody we could think of.
Okay.
And that process has been out there.
Okay.
Yeah, the original went out September on the website. The most recent, the one that went out, were reflective changes from those.
Right, the changes that come out Wednesday.
Yeah, like the original, like I said, the original, we had curb and gutter and ETJ and all that, and so we've taken those comments and changed, and then I know, Mr. Davis provided some more suggestions on the right-of-way widths with the private drainage easement. We took those suggestions in part 2 of that discussion, had that discussion with our county as well, and then so yet another change was made on that as well.
Right.
But we could have missed you. I'm not saying.
No, and I'm not saying you didn't miss me. I'm not best at looking at my emails. I was just saying this, I heard about this Wednesday, and it's a big one. You know, it affects a lot of us, so I just would like to ask for more time, if that's at all possible.
But Robert, are you saying you think there may be some positives in the mix too?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I'm not saying it's not at all. I'm not a negative person. I just want to know what we got to do, and let's go. You know?
To speak from our side, that is 99% of what we've put in, is its clear picture.
Yeah, and I think this would help, don't you? Yeah. Yeah, if I know what we gotta do, it's a lot easier to get it done. Yeah. Good.
Good, thank you. Jeff Hamilton.
Yeah, my only real comment on this, and I do appreciate the ability to speak and the ability to go to some of those meetings and give feedback and have that feedback received. My question would be for all the commissioners, have each one of you read through this since Wednesday? If you haven't, that's why I would say table it for today. Let's read through it. I think Dustin's got more comments and more as far as what has changed, what hasn't changed. That way everybody does know exactly what was in it and then move forward. I do think that it's a good thing. I do think that the city needs some standards and it will help everybody to know a clear roadmap of what to expect. So that's what I would say. If you haven't read it, let's table it. Let's get a chance to read through 71 pages of it. Make sure we're all agreeing to the things that we agreed to.
Thank you. David Hamilton?
Can I concede my time to Dustin?
Sure. Dustin, looks like you're the last on the list. You got some time.
9 minutes. Dustin, you got 9 minutes.
Well, thank you guys for giving us the time to talk about this, and thanks to Dan and his team. They've been very, very helpful for us. We enjoyed, I
I'm the nerd in the group. I enjoyed the 8 hours of public meetings.
And you were there at all 8 hours.
I appreciate you taking all 100 of my questions and complaints and concerns. I'm gonna echo, and I do, you guys know, I do work for Mark, I do work for Larry, I do work for Robbie, I do work for Davey and Jeff, so, I hadn't got to represent Paul yet, but maybe that'll happen sometime. So we appreciate the opportunity to come in here, and I do echo one big thing is, the biggest thing that this improves is the process. And I've been on my high horse with John and Joe and Lucas and Dan, like, we've got to establish a process, because it's kind of a, I don't want to say a free-for-all, but there was nothing really outlined on how to get things done. And it was a little bit different each time. And that leads to a lot of frustration on both sides. And I'm going to echo what the other guy said about, I'm going to request you to table it because I've got a copy of the original and a copy of the one that was set out on Wednesday. And I have not had time to make it all the way through. So I'm going through page by page to try to, and read both sides to determine what was changed and what was not changed. And that takes a significant amount of time to do that. And I'll say, I probably misunderstood. I thought at the public meeting that we had that we were going to get some feedback, maybe some red lines, maybe a list of all of the comments that were made and how they were addressed. We have not seen that, so we're having to go line by line to figure out what all was changed and what all was not changed. So that's been a challenge to do that. It was sent out late Wednesday afternoon, so we've had 2.5 days. And you guys know, y'all are busy, we're all busy, so it takes a fair amount of time to do that. So that's my big thing for tonight, is if we could table it. 2 weeks would be nice. These guys are saying a week. I would like 2 weeks if it's possible, because there's just so much to go through. Couple of the things specifics in there from developer standpoint. I've got a little bit of concern about a couple of things in there that I feel like are in conflict with your interlocal agreement between the city of Canyon and Randall County. Your interlocal agreement, if you haven't seen it, I would encourage you to read it. It states that the parties agree that the city of Canyon shall have exclusive jurisdiction to regulate subdivision plats and issues of related permits within the ETJ. There's a couple of items in there that state that we have to take it to the county first to get it approved there before we bring it to the city. In my opinion, that seems to be in conflict with the interlocal agreement, and I think it's in conflict with state law. The whole point of the ETJ is so that we have one set of rules to play by, not two. So that becomes a problem for us, trying to figure out how do we navigate two different sets of rules. The second thing, from the engineer standpoint, we had a lot of conversations about record drawings, as-built drawings, and I thought we had come to a consensus about how that was going to be handled. And maybe, again, it was my misunderstanding. We're still asking for CAD files in this new document. And from my standpoint, and I'll let the other engineers speak for themselves, but our CAD files are proprietary. We're not releasing them. I'll give you all the PDFs that you want, but we are going to push back pretty hard on releasing CAD files. A couple of different reasons for that. One is, like I said, it's proprietary. It's our design. It's specific to this project. The other side of it, and I'm not bashing your city engineer, but it's releasing my data to a competitor. That's a little bit problematic for us. So there's some other things that I'd like to have time to review and shoot out emails either to Dan and his group or however that needs to, or Lucas, however that needs to happen. Just a couple of, I don't think anything major that I would like to see addressed. If it's possible, it might be too late in the process, but just a handful of things that we'd like to see addressed a little bit different. But overall, establishing the process, 1,000 times better than what it was. So we do appreciate that. If we could just get a handful of the other issues resolved, I think it would be a much better document.
Thank you, Dustin. All right, with that, this probably is a good opportunity, yeah, to ask some questions.
Do we have access to a red line document?
Yes, we made a red line document that addressed all of those comments that we had on December 22nd, or 2022, December. And so there's a red line version that shows all those.
Can we send that out, or?
Yeah.
I think I'm kind of the same way. That
yeah,
saves a lot of time.
you know, in our business, we have all kinds of emotional pleas, but users that come forth with specific suggestions like this, we have the same goal. We're trying to make this a better document. They're the ones that are going to have to use it every week. So we have no problem with a 2-week tabling. And from what I heard, the testimony I've written down, except for the ETJ issue, which we'll have to check on that. Just by way of fact there, the ETJ is automatic. The city doesn't do anything to get an ETJ. The state confers that on all cities. And so it's not a thing we get to choose. It's automatically conferred upon us. But the other items here, besides that one, which I do admit will have to take a little research, I think we just want to clean that up. We don't want to have any conflicts either. So Mayor, we're fine with a 2-week table, and we can make sure that the red line gets sent out too.
Okay, thank you, Dan.
Nothing on the right of ways and easements, did they get that where it's adjustable?
Partially, they did allow the easement, but they allowed a maximum easement width. And my comment on that is, I think the max that they're allowing is 15 feet. If we could bump that to 20, I think probably 95% of the, or more of the subdivisions I've worked on, I can get everything in that 20 feet.
Is that each side or total?
I think it's each side.
You're saying 20 and 20?
It's, because I think the way it's written is, and I have to go back again, it says 15 on each side.
Yeah, so 30 total, 15 and 15.
If we could get that to 20 and 20, I think that would work for 90% of the subdivisions out there. I'd like to look at that a little bit more. And I would like to, on top of that, it's specific to drainage easements. It doesn't address utility easements. So typically what we do, Paul, is we have the drainage easement and then we grant an additional 5-foot utility easement outside of that to allow XL. So they can sit up on level ground. They don't like sitting on the side of the ditch. So it does not specify on the utility easement.
Excel says no. Excel agrees with you.
Kevin's mad at me now.
No, he's with you. He's supporting you.
So I don't know if it's not addressed in there, then we're gonna do the utility easement on the outside of that. If it, I don't think it impacts the city or the county because it's franchise utilities. So I don't know that y'all have a concern one way or the other.
The main goal, Paul, that we all agree on, county and I think development, is trying to maintain the 4-to-1 ditch slope. And so we've had quite a few back and forths on that, so.
It's just a lot easier for a developer to work with the easement than a right of way, because we
Right.
have no control of that.
Right, we came back with making the right of way bigger, the staff did, and so we spoke with Dustin and some of the developers. They mentioned about having the easement instead. And so we took those comments back to Randall County to ask how they felt on the ETJ, and overall, Lucas, they were good with it, right? Pretty much, I think.
That's where I got the 15-foot number. I talked with staff here and at Randall County on what they thought was appropriate. So that's why we're proposing that number.
On the Randall County standard, it doesn't have a number currently.
Correct.
Correct, that is correct. And the streets in the ETJ should be constructed almost like they were doing rural Randall County as well. So we tried to meet that as much as we could.
The big concern on the rural stuff is still the concrete ribbon. That what's allowed right now is either a curb and gutter, which nobody wants to do that in ETJ.
Right.
A 24-foot wide street with 2 feet of base on the outside of that, which is what most people are doing.
Right.
Or 24-foot wide with a 2-foot concrete ribbon.
Correct.
Now, what I understand is that's been reduced to you can do curb and gutter or the 24-foot with concrete ribbon. We've eliminated the option for the 2 feet of base.
Right now, the new document says to follow the subdivision regulations of Randall County for their street section.
Again,
So if they require it,
that's what I'm saying is that I think that's in conflict with your interlocal agreement.
I think that if that's our standard, then it's not in conflict because that's what we're setting as the city standard. Would be to follow that manual.
Copying and pasting. to make it easier.
That way Randall
What I'm
County gets to
saying is,
maintain the
so,
same
yeah,
road.
We would like to keep the option of the 2 feet of base in lieu of the 2 feet of concrete.
And if the Randall County Road and subdivision manual allows that 2 foot of base, then this would too.
But again, it's irrelevant to me what Randall County allows, since the interlocal agreement says the city of Canyon has the exclusive jurisdiction.
We sure value Randall County's opinion on that.
It is important, but somebody's gotta take control.
We agree.
So if that's our policy though, is that the ETJ development will follow the road and subdivision standard and ETJ road sections, then that would be following the city policy.
Can we add it back in this then?
It is in there.
Without the ribbon?
Yeah, you can see it on, I referenced it in the Word doc that I sent you guys earlier today. On page 48.
We see it, we just don't like it.
Those two different things, Davey.
I agree.
Our current subdivision regulations don't allow any curb and gutter, or any ditch section.
We're not
outside
arguing
the city
that. We
limits.
understand that the subdivision
So-
regulation needs to be updated. We're completely in favor of that.
Can't have your cake and eat it too, Dustin.
What's the point of having the cake, Joe?
It's not your birthday.
That is a good point.
I know it's not on the agenda, but since it was brought up about the conflict between this agreement and the interlocal agreement, is it on the horizon to update the interlocal agreement? What year was that signed? It was signed-
Well, what I'd like to ask Dustin, can you call out those sections that you feel like conflict with the interlocal agreement, shoot us an email?
Yes, sir.
We'll check that out.
Yes, sir.
Is it on the horizon to update the interlocal agreement?
We had been talking about it.
I don't know if there's any favor on the other side of the table, and I know Amarillo's been talking about it, but I don't know where those conversations have gone.
It had been brought up. We have not taken any action on it at this point.
Do you happen to know when the last time the interlocal agreement was updated?
Think about 2004.
It's when it was originally adopted by Ted Wood. It was when that law came into play, and they ran and got our ETJ development.
Yeah, the statute gave cities and counties 120 days to adopt an interlocal agreement when that law became effective.
It hasn't been touched since its original adoption.
To my knowledge, it has not.
I don't think it's been touched at all. It's very subjective to an open-ended.
Joe, was it one of the issues that we would ask someone to go to Randall County would be on a, access to a road, the driveway permit?
Yes. Yeah, on a driveway permit that we're working through.
That's one of the issues would be, if it's a county road and it's running there through the ETJ. Yes, we're helping this development to be created, but they control their road, they need to set that driveway. That's why we would ask Randall County to weigh in on that.
Yeah.
Is that an appropriate place for that driveway?
Right. And TxDOT does that too.
And we would do the same thing with TxDOT.
Correct. Approving those driveways.
They're in our ETJ, but they're on VFW, and we're gonna say, before we can do anything with you, you need to get a permit from TxDOT to have permission, even though we're responsible. There's two red lines, one based on the 20.
Mr. Mayor, I move we table.
Okay.
A second.
We have a motion, and a second to table. Any further discussion?
Mayor, could we just ask, are you contemplating like a 2-week table or a table at the next, just for us to plan?
Next meeting is next week, and then the meeting after that is March 6th.
My thought is we probably need to give it till March 6th if we just got a 1-week window.
Can we amend the motion to that point?
So moved.
Second.
Is that?
Thank you, that just gives us a target. Yeah.
Okay. We have a motion, and a second to table this item until March 6th. All in favor, signify by raising your right hand. Opposed, like sign. The motion passes, and we will take it up again on March 6th. And really appreciate the atmosphere here, development community, and everybody willing to come to the table and work at this together. And thank you, Dan and Lucas and John and Joe for all the effort. And I know this has been a long process, but looks like we're getting there. So thank you all.
A long process, we just made longer.
Yeah, but only a little bit longer.
Can we get another direct quote from Cody Jones?
Surprise. Everybody's cool.
All right, with that, we will adjourn into exec session. What time we got, Chris? 5:53. Pursuant to 551.071, consultation with attorney.
Debate the mayor's.
Rob, you better check your email before this next time.
I got a girl that does that. I don't look at my email. She just knew I wouldn't go. She knew I couldn't read.
Because that's what we did.
Cody, if we don't have item for exec, do I hear another motion?
We don't need exec session. No executive session.
Appreciate you.
Hey, thanks, guys.
How you doing, sir? You doing all right?
Doing well,
I don't need to go. If I wanted to find out who would be the person to talk to?
I could probably get you some more information about it right now. Yes, so I can send you the agenda.
Okay.
It's also just available on our website. So that has all of the information that was shown on the slides. So that will have just about everything that you're looking for. I can give you my email.
He didn't want to be locked in. I read it.
Yeah, right down there.
Vicinity.
I was like, oh, wait, this?